Good afternoon, all. I hope everybody is doing fine. I am Dr. Ghanshyam Jagatkar, Head of the Department Critical Care, Medicover Hospitals. Friends, over the last 2 weeks, we are seeing in various news channels and across the country that the numbers are slowly increasing. No doubt, India has done much better than what a large number of countries anticipated. But the recent increase in numbers is a major worry and concern for all of us. And it's only a matter of time that we are going to see more and more numbers coming to our hospitals. It is also a major concern for many of us as to what the scenario is going to be once a lockdown is released. And we know for sure that this is going to be a long drawn battle. It's not going to be over the next, say, 1 month, 2 months. We all know as medical professionals that what we are going to face is going to last for a long duration. And if we have to win this battle against this pandemic, we need the support of the young doctors who form the major chunk of the task force, be it from the emergency medicine, anesthesia, pulmonology, intensive care. We know that the young doctors in the form of fellows, DNB trainees, interns are the major workforce who are going to do your night shifts, the long shifts, and in this battle against this pandemic, this forms the major task force. At the same time, it is our basic duty that we address their concerns, we try to understand what could be going on through their minds, and this panel discussion is with the idea and intention to see if we can identify what their possible mindset could be, what could be going on in their minds, and how can we address some of the concerns that we all have come across when we have interacted with our own teams. Friends, the team of Medicover gets you a fantastic panel across all specialties. We have with us Dr. Satish Kailasham. He is somebody who runs an active emergency medicine training program. We have with us Dr. Rahul Agarwal, a senior consultant physician from Medicover Hyderabad, who has more than 18 years of experience in internal medicine. Dr. Ruchira, the head of the Department of Critical Care from Medicover Nashik, again, who has an extensive experience. She's also a teacher who has IDCCM fellowship program under her. And we are fortunate to have Dr. Bharat Trivedi, who is a leading consultant in pulmonology from Nashik, Medicover, who has more than 20 years of experience, and he has been one of the main consultants who saw the epidemic of H1N1 swine flu in its peak. I'm sure that the panel today is going to address some of the concerns that most of the junior doctors may have when we are facing this great dilemma. To start with, Dr. Satish, one of the major, first interactions that any COVID patient is going to have is in the emergency medicine room. And the first point of contact or interaction is with an emergency medicine resident. Now, as a young resident, I'm sure you would have had chat with them. What generally goes on with their mind? And what would be your advice as to how can they handle such a scenario?
It's a good question, sir. Actually, the front soldiers of any hospital is the emergency physicians. And we know that the concept of EMS started less than 20 years in India. And it's very, very clear that all the emergency medicine departments were manned by very, very young people. They have very, very less experience in handling especially these epidemics and pandemics. We need a lot of guidance. We need a lot of directing for them. There should be a strong mentor and guide to direct them to handle these patients in the trials or in the ER itself. If they have a structured protocols and policies, like if the patients are coming to the emergency departments, proper screening room should be there where they can screen the patient well, where this patient can be a COVID suspect or not. These patients, when they are COVID suspects, they should be taken to a department area where the hot zone, we can the hot zone you can create, the patients can be transferred over there. There again, the expert team with a proper PPE, they should have a proper protocol on the PPE design, which PPE they have to wear in the screening room, which PPE they have to wear in the hot zone of the ED, and how they have to examine the patient, how need to resuscitate the patient. If they formulate the guidelines and put on the paper, and if they do the lot of trainings, then that is the best way we can face the battle, because all the time 24/7 you will not see expert senior sitting by ED. So the younger residents, they have to give a lot of guidance and training during this pandemic. And we all know during these days all the OPDs are closed, all the patients are rushing to the ED itself, and we have to address everyone. It's not like that we can't address the people coming in with ACS or trauma or stroke. At the same time, we need to address the COVID patients. We should divide your ED, COVID ED or non-COVID ED if possible. If possible, put a wall if possible. You can make a demarcation between the COVID and non-COVID zones, and restrict your staff, less staff for the COVID zone, because now we are seeing very less numbers. So you can demarcate many less number of staff for the COVID and use the other staff for the non-COVID also. At the same time, the burden is on everyone. We are all very new, so you need to call for help. You involve the medical administration, HSCC team, critical care physicians, internists and physicians. Always call for the help. Sit with them, formulate the protocol, train, and face the battle. And there is no hurry in treating the patient. Please take care of yourself first, then the patient comes next. In this pandemic, it is very important. You need to take advice from the seniors, call for help. Don't be in rush, hurry in treating the patient. Put a protocol, adhere to it, follow it, and you will win the battle. This is the only thing I want to address.
Absolutely, Satish. I think the key here is to have very clearly established protocols so that the confusion that can happen is minimized to a large extent. Ruchira, similarly, you run the training program in intensive care. What kind of discussion you have with your trainees, and what goes on in their heads? What are the general concerns that most of the trainees may have regarding the concerns of night shifts, long duty hours, staying away from families, and how do you think would be the best way of addressing those things?
Yes, Ghanshyam, actually COVID pandemic has really, we have to face a big challenge, and everybody discuss about the physical impact of COVID. But what about the mental impact? That is most important, I feel. And particularly the young generation, the young doctors, they already have lot of anxiety about it. And on the top of that, they are the frontline doctors. So probably, I think we as a team member, we should address them, we should sit with them, discuss with them, alleviate their anxiety. Now, from critical care point of view, I would suggest that donning doffing is extremely important. Now, fortunately, up till now at Nasik Center, we have not got any COVID positive patient. But I started discussing with my team that treat every patient as a COVID positive, practice donning, practice doffing. They should understand that doffing is very important to prevent the self-contamination. There are many good videos about it. Apart from that, we must make them realize that their safety is the priority. They might have many questions like if they get quarantined because of the accidental exposure, how about their family, how about their kids, or whether they will get personal protective equipments, whether they will get the mask, etc. So I think we need to address them that they are the priority and their safety is of utmost importance for us. So it's our role to motivate them.
Absolutely, Ruchira. I think as heads of the departments, as team leaders, I think it's extremely vital that every hospital, every team leader, every head of the department, addresses these basic concerns. I mean, most of the time it's the anxiety, among the young doctors of whether these simple things will be addressed or not. And that plays a major role. Sitting with them and
Exactly.
talking to them and understanding their concerns is very, very vital. If we have to win this battle. Dr. Bharat, you know, again, if you look at the way these patients are transported, be it from the emergency medicine to the intensive care unit or to the radiology suite, most of the times it is the junior doctors who accompany the patients, right? And there is always this concern, and so much of it coming into news. Transport can be risky. There is a palpable tension among youngsters that will I get infected or will I be exposed? What should I do? What would be your advice, especially if you're looking at somebody who's going from the emergency medicine to the intensive care unit or going to a radiological procedure or transporting in within the hospital? We do understand that this has to be minimized as much as possible, but in general, what do you think should be the approach or the advice to a youngster?
Many patients, especially these patients, will now are presenting in the emergency departments. But once the lockdown opens, probably these patients will also be presenting to the outpatient departments. All the patients who are coming to you till the pandemic is on probably should be treated with a high index of suspicion. And that is the reason why you have to take universal precautions. The PPEs have to be in place all time during your on duty. That will give you maximum protection from acquiring the infection. Once the patient probably comes to you, you have to screen the patient well, the patients whom you suspect to have COVID disease, or a patient who is probably COVID positive needs to be isolated from all other patients even before the transportation. So at least a 6 feet distance needs to be maintained between the other patients and this patient. And meanwhile, till the time the transportation facilities are, the arrangements are being made either to transport them to the wards, to the isolation rooms, or to the ICCU, we need to counsel the relatives and the patient, put a mask on the patient, which normally has to be done before the patient enters your ER or in your cabins. And the relatives need to be counseled about the disease, the screenings that they may have to undergo. There is a lot of anxiety even in the patient's mind when they are coming and when you are talking to them about the coronavirus disease. So in such times, we know about the disease, we know about the outcomes. There are such a less amount of complications that are seen, hardly 2 to 3% of mortality that is seen. So, but what the patient is coming across is what he's looking at the internet or what he's seeing on the social media about the pandemic of the disease and so many deaths that is being happening. So anxiety comes in the patient's mind, and when you are stressed up and when you're anxious, you normally tend to make mistakes. So what precautions they have to take even after getting transport need to be told to the patients by these young doctors who are going to be handling the patients first. Once the transportation facility arrangements are being made, the patient needs to be transported preferably from another route, which is not being used by other patients or by the other staff, and should be accompanied by all the healthcare workers who are only wearing the PPEs, and no other person should be accompanying the patient. The patient, before transferring the patient, wherever the patient is to be transferred, the person over there or the healthcare workers over there need to be told that such a patient is being transferred, and all the arrangements for transferring needs to be made. The throat swab collection should be done, if not done earlier, should be done at the earliest, so that the results are also, we get the results very soon.
No, I think that's key. Very, very simple things like putting a mask to the patient as soon as the patient comes. It has a major impact in reducing trans infection or cross infection to others, and that's something which we need to tell the juniors. The first thing that they see or first thing they do when they actually come across a patient is to just first put a mask on the patient. Rahul, now I understand that trainees in intensive care or trainees in emergency medicine, they have joined the course for doing a fellowship program. But many times when you look at the wards or those areas where the stable patients are, managed, majority of the time these wards are taken care by duty medical officers. Yes, there is a consultant who oversees the overall care, but whether it's a private sector or a public sector, you have young interns or duty medical officers who may not be in any training program. Now, I'm sure you must have interacted with them. What goes on in their minds? I mean, uh, is they do they have an option of saying, look, I don't want to be involved in this case, or can they say like, this is not my job? Or what would be your advice? What do you think should they think about, or how should they start thinking about this pandemic? Because going down the lane, I don't think that the number of doctors are going to be sufficient. So we will need every hand and help that is available out there.
Ghanshyam, first and foremost thing, we usually fear things that we are in proportion to our ignorance. So I would want our doctors to be first possibly knowing the major aspects of the disease. Although we say it's a novel virus, it's not a novel anymore, I believe, because the studies that are going on, we now know fairly how the virus behaves, how it spreads, what are the possible incubation periods, how you should or would get infected, and what you should take as a doctor. So you should always understand that these youngsters which have always loved to work with and have interacted also, they have to be explained by example that the senior doctor should take the first go to and interact with these patients and how to be and behaving with these patients. Normally, we have had about 5 patients, as you know, Ghanshyam, in our hospital. So it is not that we need to go each time to the patient, because their mobile visit is fine enough. Some of them can be telepathically asked. Some of them, the inputs can be taken by the duty nurse who is having a proper protective equipment all the time round the clock. So we can always try to minimize our interaction with these patients. Second is, as we have been rightly told about the PPE, there are certain basics about a PPE. How does the infection spread?
Rahul,
By nose or mouth, or by touching of the surfaces. If you are good enough to understand that there is no need for an N95 all the time, say, lot of the time, as I told, patients are very stable. So we need not see them all the time. And if a senior is accompanying them during their first or second rounds, it gives them a lot of boost. And knowing the personal protective equipments, when it is needed, how much it is needed is important. In the wards, when there are a non-COVID patient, you could be sufficing by putting on a mask to the patient and a mask to yourself. In the COVID ward itself, where there are stable patients, you need not actually go and auscultate the patient all the time. You can just have an interaction, maintain a proper distance, and just knowing the vitals. That is all. The more important thing here is surveillance. Surveillance, whether or not the attending sisters are taking proper personal protective equipment and care for themselves, seeing that the investigations that are supposed to go are there, giving psychological support for themselves and the caregivers, and also the support staff is more than enough. I'm sure that in further discussions we'll be talking about the chemoprophylaxis also, but these are the basic things that the duty doctor should know, that the COVID virus has known to less effect and be less virulent to those who are young in age. We are a little bit older for our age now.
I absolutely agree, Rahul. I think one of the major concerns arises when you do not know about the disease. Now, your fear multiplies when you do not know how the disease spreads, what are the disease manifestations, and if you can, educate the youngsters, especially the duty medical officers, the interns, about what the disease is all about, how does it spread, and how simple precautions, can help us, prevent from getting infected, or can help us, letting others be safe. I think that goes a long way, and these are the simple things that we need to keep in mind. This is what is needed in this time of ours. Ruchira, now we all agree that every day you open the internet or every day you open your WhatsApp group, there's a new theory which is flying in. Now every day there is a new therapy that is being tried out. Different forwards coming, suggesting different medicines being useful, different interventions being effective. That can create a lot of confusion. I mean, that can put a lot of doubts. Suddenly you feel, we are not doing this, we are not following this protocol. Now, how does one escape from this?
Since the WHO has declared COVID pandemic, I think our social media and cell phones are completely loaded with these COVID related information. And I think I would address to all the doctors who are listening that whatever information you are getting on social media, the source should be authentic. There are some guidelines published by WHO or ICMR, or there are some guidelines by state, even national guidelines are also coming up. So I think whatever information you are getting on our cell phone should be authentic, number one. Don't get anxious by reading that information. If you have any anxiety related to any kind of information, then I think I would suggest you all to discuss with your seniors. Don't carry those myths in your mind, and make your ideas clear. And based on those ideas, I think it is everyone's responsibility to set up our own unit's protocol for the betterment of the, or for to make everyone comfortable.
I completely agree. I think we have very good sources of authentic information coming
Yes.
from the WHO, the Ministry of Health, our own Society of Critical Care, Indian Society of Critical Care has released a position statement. I think there are clear-cut guidelines which have been established, and the key would be to know all the departments sitting across and having a discussion and seeing what is the best scientific evidence that is available, and making the juniors a part of this discussion is going to help them clear their anxiety, their doubts in a long way. Dr. Bharat, another major concern that I have seen in a large number of youngsters is, what if this patient is an asymptomatic carrier? What if the patient doesn't have all the classical signs and symptoms? Again, asymptomatic carrier, there has been so much of importance that has been given. The biggest concern that I have come across is, whenever I interact with various residents, they say, "Sir, this could be asymptomatic carrier." Now, what is your advice to them? Yes, it could be, but how can they come over this fear, or how can they handle this situation?
Viral shedding, which happens after getting infected, is basically highest in the first stage when the patients are asymptomatic. So this anxiety is but naturally going to be there, and we have to take, as told you before, every patient who is coming to you presently should be treated as a COVID patient, and the same precautions need to be taken for each and every, while examining each and every patient. So if a patient is there who is asymptomatic and coming to you either with a history of a contact with a COVID patient, or with a history of a contact with some patient who has got a respiratory illness, or probably is residing in an area which is a red zone or a orange zone, which the government has declared, where there are a lot of patients with COVID which are found, you need to take all the precautions. You need to take a throat swab of these patients, and depending on the patient's psych, probably decide about the quarantine of the patient, whether the patient can be quarantined at home or whether the patient needs to be quarantined in the isolation wards. However, there is, for the youngsters, probably there is no need to panic if you are taking your own precautions. There is need to panic. Every patient you have to examine with the utmost care, utmost precautions, with complete PPE, and that is true for every patient, because this disease is probably presenting in a variety of ways. The presentations are quite different that we are coming across. So it can present with just a respiratory illness, or sometimes they are presenting with non-respiratory complaints also. So it is better that we examine every patient with the same precautions and with the same intensity, and take care of ourselves. If we are taking care of ourselves, probably will not get infected.
No, I totally agree with you. I think the keyword is maintaining the intensity. We are very meticulous in the initial stages, and there could be very lapses in the way we kind of examine the patients or take care of ourselves, especially if you come to know that you don't have any patients, positive patient in your setup. That is where lapses in concentration, lapses in intensity are possible. Satish, there are so many protocols that are being suggested. There's the constant reminding about donning, importance of doffing, and the worry. And we have come across various news channels, or heard in various news channels, that some patients were exposed and the entire hospital was quarantined. So there is always this pressure on a youngster, whether he is doing his things properly or not. Now, there could be doubts in his mind that, okay, if I break a protocol or if I forget a step in a particular sequence, how does the role of a senior fit in here? What is the role of a mentor in guiding the juniors in such situations?
Yes, sir. As the Dr. Rahul sir has said, you need to lead from front actually. All the seniors and mentors who are there, they need to lead from the front. They should show how you to take care of the patient first. They should show how to wear the PPE. They should show how to examine, how to manage the patient in the ER. The best way to face these patients is use the MTER concept. I always use the MTER concept. Like if you don't have the patients, that's the best place to learn, best place to do the mistakes. You do simulation, think the patient is coming to the ED, how you receive the patient, how you wear your PPE, and do mistakes. Best place is in the simulation. If you want to kill a patient in the simulation. Then you will learn and you can learn from the mistakes. And I used to have a whiteboard concept in my ER. Like every day you write something about the present events. Like right now we are writing about COVID. So you do small thing about like PPE, what type of PPE you used to wear for the priority 1 patient. What type of PPE should you have with the priority 2 patients. These things they have to regularly train the doctors and they should give the conference to them. And the same time, they should encourage them to raise the incident reports. We need to encourage them, tell their mistakes to us, and we need to have the answers for it. We usually have a regular shift outs, the regularly frequent discussions in between the shifts. This moment is very, very important. In between shifts, senior has to be there at the handover time, and they need to discuss everything about the patient, how they handled, any mistakes they have done. They have to learn from the mistakes. So I would like to say simulation is the best way. You can prevent the mistakes. And if at all mistakes are happening, see residents, doctors, everyone, this is the new pandemic for us. We don't know the guidelines and changing every day, every hour. Everyone is prone to do mistakes. We need to encourage them to work, but we cannot point out the mistakes. But at the end of the day, we should tell them the mistakes pointing it's like a fault learning, not a fault finding, because we should tell them, because you should not, if you don't take care of properly, it will affect you itself. So you should take care of your first self. So tell us about mistakes, no problem, but the seniors should address them in a proper way, that don't point about them. Let them understand the importance of knowing everything, seeing the patient in this pandemic. We'll see a lot of patients in a different type of patients. See, recently we saw a patient with typical chest pain coming to the ED, and the ECG has some non-specific changes. Our cardiologist wanted to do an ECG on the patient. So yes, in a regular way, we used to do like that only, because patient has a typical chest pain and sweating and some ECG changes, we want to do ECG. But fortunately, we had done a chest X-ray on the patient, it had a patch. We never know a patient coming with a chest pain with sweating and some minimal ECG changes will have a patch on his chest. So it's a learning for us. So every patient is a learning for us. So please, seniors and mentors, they need to give time for the residents, juniors to learn things. We need to address them very, very carefully. They should not get demotivated during the learning their shifts, because we are working like 9 to 5 or 2 to 8 shifts. They are working 24/7 under tremendous stress. They had to take care of the ER and they had to go take care of their family itself. So we had to learn, make sure that they should not get motivated. They should get trained every day, do frequent drills, trainings, simulations, and give the feedbacks to them. I think it will definitely help them a lot. And you can do a social distancing parties also, if at all. Like you have a chai with him, you can, instead of sitting in the air, you can take him for the coffee day, you can have a tea with him and you can explain them what mistakes you have done, how you can improve yourself. That will build confidence in the residents, and definitely they'll work with you forever.
No, I totally agree, Satish. I mean, it's very, very, very key that, mistakes are taken in a way which can be a learning experience to them rather than a fault finding, experience. This or that will have a tremendous impact on his overall morale and overall, his motivation levels to work in such a difficult scenario. We have been talking about the PPE, and everywhere, the discussion is always about the personal protective equipment. Ruchira, now the junior most doctors generally are not party to any of the major meetings or any of the policy decisions that happen. And the usual concerns are, since I am the junior most guy, will I get a proper PP? Or is
Absolutely.
the PP reserved only to the senior most consultant or the senior most guy? Now, this is something which I have observed is very common. Now,
Yeah.
how do we address this concern?
Absolutely true. Basically, they have a lot of anxiety and fear that whether they will get adequate PPE and mask and mask shield, etc. Maybe social media is also responsible to some extent for this myth, because a couple of days back, if you read that even in the developed countries, they were not getting adequate PPE and the people were working, kind of news we were getting on the social media. And that maybe just added on the Indians' anxiety as well. But I think we have got adequate time to prepare ourselves to fight against this war. And I will take my junior most resident from the department, and I will assure that doctor that he is going to get PPE. Number one, we have made those PPEs available in our department. We assured them that there is no hurry in rushing down, because our safety is the utmost important, and no point in rushing at the compromising your safety. So we need to address them. Many times, as you said, that they are not directly involved in the administrative meetings, but I think if we start conducting meetings at a departmental level and motivate them, assure them that yes, your safety is priority, and then we are going to fight against this battle, then I think this issue should be sorted out.
No, I think that is very, very key. No, I think we need to have our own departmental meetings where, they are given a voice to raise their opinions. They are given a chance where they can, speak about what is going on in their mind, and trying to address those things. I think that those things are very, very important, because until unless those doubts are cleared from their minds, they're always working in a very, very cloudy state of mind. Uh, Bharat, I'll come to a very, very, I wouldn't say controversial, but, a topic which many of my own team members, and I've been a part of many WhatsApp groups. This discussion has been actively going on. The role of hydroxychloroquine as prophylaxis. Now, a lot of youngsters, want to take that. I know the evidence is not totally in favor, not totally against. Uh, the ICMR guidelines recommends. Plus, there is also the question of the other protection, that is vaccination. That again seems to be a far, far away thing, given the whole sort of things. So, what would be your advice to these doctors?
The anxiety about whether it's a good and chemotherapy or not, whether it will be available or not. Another anxiety about what I've seen in youngsters who are coming to me and asking me is about the cardiac side effects of the drugs. So I just want to tell you that HCQS has been used for more than 3 decades now for the prevention of malaria, or for the treatment of malaria, and for chronic inflammatory diseases such as the SCD and rheumatoid arthritis. We have been using it so rampantly in patients, and we come across very, very less amount of side effects. So the side effect profile, except for doing an ECG probably to start before starting the drug, is more than that is sufficient. Someone who has got probably an ophthalmic problem should get an fundoscopy done before starting the drug. HCQS basically works as a prophylactic drug by stopping the entry of the virus into the cell, either by inhibiting the glycosylation or by inhibiting the proteolytic procedure which is going on, or by causing endosomal acidification. This is the way the drug works. So what it is going to prevent is probably going to prevent the entry of the virus into the cell. So it does not prevent you from getting a coronavirus infection. So what is important is that HCQS, whether you are taking it or not taking it, what is important is the basic prevention protocol, the PPEs that you have to use. There should not be any lapses in using a PPE. You have to take all precautions which have been guided, which have been given by CDC while treating all these patients with coronavirus infection. Definitely with HCQS, there are a lot of data which shows that HCQS, though it it is definitely not going to prevent the infection with coronavirus, but it has to a certain extent shown to prevent the complications associated with the infection and down-regulate the inflammatory response which the host develops against coronavirus. So taking HCQS as a chemoprophylactic drug, if it is available, it is definitely going to help. But if it is not available, there is nothing to panic. It is not the drug that is there. If you don't take the drug, you are going to develop some complications. And after taking that also the drug, you should not relax. You should primarily focus on the prevention by using your PPEs, keep the intensity up. You have to take care of yourself. HCQ is not going to take care of you. It is not going to prevent you from acquiring the coronavirus infection. So, and if at all the drug is available in some organization, I think the preference should be given to the doctors who are the healthcare workers who are directly coming in contact or who are treating these patients with coronavirus disease. As far as vaccination is concerned, probably within 4 to 6 months, there are vaccinations under trial now. Within 4 to 6 months, probably we will have a vaccine for coronavirus disease that will be there in the market. And like influenza vaccine came, it gets modified every time. There is quite modification that is going to happen with this vaccine also. Vaccination, again, there will be a shortage of vaccination and there will be such a lot of organizations should take care that if they are going to keep such patients, if they are going to treat such patients, the healthcare workers who are going to directly be going to be responsible in treating this patient should be vaccinated whenever the vaccine is available.
I totally agree, Bharat. I think the key is, okay, whether you take HCQS or not, the most important part is you do not lax. I mean, just because you're taking HCQS doesn't mean that you forget your other, hand hygiene or, remove your mask. Okay. I think those are extremely important steps. Rahul, you're aware of, whenever we sit and talk with our guys, the general question that they ask is, should we stay back from family or should we stay somewhere else? Now, the psychological impact, the question that, once I go back home, am I a source of infection to my kids? Am I a source of infection to my family? Now, this has a tremendous, impact on the mindset of an individual, especially the youngsters. What would you advise to them? Or what do you say that, what kind of precautions they can take to, make sure that they go back home safely?
We have known and interacted with a lot of our juniors. One way out is to stay in the hospital itself. That is the best place and the safest place you can be. So there are places in the hospitals which are designated for the doctors, and then they can stay there till this epidemic so-called is done or at least attenuates. You can stay there. Second thing, who cannot stay in the hospital itself and have certainly got back to go home, have to take care that they don't carry the infection from the hospital to their house. So the one way and the best way I believe is to bring as less as possible that you can from your house so that you cannot take it back home. Like just coming in the basic, say, clothing that you can, come back to the hospital, change into the scrub of the hospital. You don't need to get your wallets. You don't need to get your, say, belts and shoes and all that. You can use the hospital equipments only. Before you leave the hospital, you can see to it that you have thoroughly cleaned yourself, probably take a bath, have a good hand hygiene, and then go back home. When you go back home also, you should take care that you go straight to the washroom, have a good bath again, and launder your whatever you had worn all through the day. That is taking a self-care of yourself. That also includes that you take care of yourself physically as well as mentally. Physical care is that regularly exercise, take good food, and sleep properly. Sleep is very important because rest would cause you to be less mentally unstable. Then comes the caregiving of those at home. There is no need to be strictly socially isolating you inside your home itself. In fact, what I propose is something called as social interaction with physical isolation. Probably you can stay a little bit far away from those who are, you can feel more susceptible, the elderlies and the very young, and then keep addressing their issues at home also. They would be having 1,000 questions in their minds about the disease, about your own safety. You can assure them that I am safe, that I am needed in this hour of pandemic, It is infuriating, it is frightening, it is frustrating, but I need to be there to support my people when they need me the most. If you give them that psychological support and you feel that you are safe enough by doing the basic health hygiene practices, I think that's nothing like anything. Of course, there should be elderly that should be taken care of. Their needs of medical and social needs and psychological needs has to be taken care of. There are a lot of people who are into relationships, who are having small kids, or who have just married and have spouses. They will have interpersonal problems, but I think that can also talking to them that this was never thrust upon us. It is a unusual situation, and pandemic always needs that the caregiver should also be given some care. So having self-care is not selfishness. Be selfish about your care, be selfish about your physical and mental being, and also take care that you have the confidence of knowing the disease. If you know the disease, you will have nothing to fear of as such.
Absolutely, Rahul. Taking care of yourself is not selfishness, and I don't think there's any other better time than the ongoing pandemic, because it is very, very important that we take care of ourselves, so that if we are fit enough, then we'll be able to go out there and save many other lives. Coming to a very, very key aspect of a pandemic case, Satish, when you have a cardiac arrest, again, if you see in a general cardiac arrest scenario, it is usually the youngsters who are actively involved in the resuscitation efforts. Most of the seniors are at a distance giving them instructions, but the active CPR or the chest compression is being done by the youngsters. And this is the area where, in the heat of or in the adrenal rush, there could be a lot of lapses that can happen. So what would be your guide, or what would be your advice to the youngsters?
Yes, sir. Very important question it is, because we know all the young people, because of adrenal rush, they tend to do the chest compressions at the earliest. That we learn from the day one of our EM career. But we need to change, update, or modify something. The recent AHA guidelines have been changed and updated. It's like outside hospital cardiac arrest during the transport or in the ER. For a normal public or the doctors who are working, doctors at the home, if there is a suspected patient cardiac arrest, it's clear that the entire family members are already exposed to the patient. So they can start a hands-on CPR, but if possible, wear a mask for the rescuer, and for the victim also, we need to give the mask and we can do the hands-on CPR. And during the transport, if you want to send an ambulance to a place where there is a suspected patient is there in cardiac arrest or impending cardiac arrest, you need to prepare well, don your PPE, prepare your ambulance, technicians, like that they can do the CPR. They can have the protective gear on and start the CPR on the patient. Well, coming to the ED, there are a lot of protocols modified, updated. The clinical protocols are not changed. But before you touch the patient as a suspected or positive cardiac arrest, you have to restrict your people in the cardiac resuscitation. Don the PPE first, your safety is first, then enter the scene. And during the cardiac arrest, there are two types of advices they have given now. If you have a electrical or mechanical chest compression machines, you can use them instead of using your hands for the chest compressions. At the same time, during the CPR, if you want to oxygenate the patient by the bag mask ventilation, instead of giving a bag mask ventilation, you can still give passive oxygenation for the patient through the mask, and you can do the CPR. Instead of 30:2, like chest compressions versus 2 rescue breaths, continuously do the chest compressions and give the passive oxygenation to the patient. This is also one guidance given by AHA. And at the same time, if you have a mechanical chest compression machines, you can use them. Restrict the patient, restrict the staff in the CPR. And one more important thing they tell is, you need to involve a senior anesthetist or anyone in the hospital who can intubate early intubation for the patient, because you do not delay intubation, because the process of aerosol generation procedures should be attempted at the earliest. That will save everyone. And one more thing is, if you are going to do a bag mask ventilation, use a proper tight seal and apply the filter, the HEPA filter, HME filter, what we use. You need to apply the filter at the earliest and you can do the bag mask ventilation when you are doing a chest compressions. The same thing, the two things, don the PPE, restrict your movement, early intubation. If you have a video laryngoscope, preferably video laryngoscope is indicated during this airway management during the CPR. And when in our hospital, we have a acrylic box which can restrict the aerosol generation to everyone. I think a lot of innovations have happened during this pandemic. That will control the aerosol generation outside, so that we can restrict to the acrylic box. So senior most people should intubate the patient, especially if you have a video laryngoscope, use the video laryngoscope. Early connection of the tight seal and early connection of the HME filter or HEPA filter has to be attached. Restriction of the staff. They are the updated guidelines AHA is giving, and we are all following. And always restrict your staff who are doing the CPR. And at the same time, what the guidelines says is you need to stratify the risk of whom you are going to resuscitate. If the patient is young or old, if the patient is immunocompromised, the length of unresponsiveness, if the patient is elderly male, elderly man with lot of medical issues, and the unconscious level duration is more than 10 minutes or 20 minutes, you need to risk stratification should be there, whether you are going to achieve anything on the patient or not, whether it is ethical to do anything on the patient or not during this pandemic. That is very, very important. A senior person in the ED definitely will help you in this resuscitation, whether to attempt resuscitation or not. So that is most important point, whether they already mentioned in the guidelines, and of course we are all following. I think these are the most important point when you are doing resuscitation, you should follow.
Yeah, I totally agree, Satish. I think the key is one, minimize the number of people who are there during the resuscitative effects. Look at whether there is a salvageability or not. I mean, are you going to look at every patient who comes into the cardiac arrest scenario? Probably there could be some who may not be in a situation where CPR may be necessary. So all these are very, very vital. It's not only trying to save the patient, but also making sure that the people in and around you are equally protected. We are looking at May 3rd, May 4th as the probable end of lockdown. I'm sure the feeling among medical fraternity is different and the feeling among general public is different. What are your thoughts? Rahul, all of you, I'm one by one.
As a physician, I think the first person to be afraid of the rush that I'm going to see. Because now that the rainy season has started, we will be seeing general flu and possibly some dengue cases also coming on. There are instances in which malaria also can present as a acute viral infections. So there is a lot of miseducation, or probably good education in the general masses, that anything that you are having cough, cold, fever, body pains, you just rush, take emergency appointment, and then see the doctor be having a coronavirus in you. Probably whatever we are going to now find would not be those people. Probably they would be more of a general flu, and just reassuring them, sending them back home would be fine. That is, I'm talking personally as a physician. When we talk about the young listeners that we are targeting today, they could be the son or daughters of parents who must be having a flu. There could be the duty doctors who are posted in hospitals. There could be the young practitioners that they have started their practicing just now, or there could be even those physician related, non-medical related associated affiliations, like say suppose orthopedician or an ENT surgeon or an ophthalmologist. See, this is going to be a challenging thing for post-lockdown for all of us, because the number of cases that have been contained in their homes are going to rise. Probably people will be riddled with fear and with a lot of doubts in them. You are the person who has to take care of first yourself, that you protect yourself whenever you are seeing a patient in the OPD by basic minimum hand hygiene and mask hygiene. And then you have to stratify those patients who you really need to auscultate, or you really need to investigate, or keep in the hospital as an inpatient. So once you are able to master the act, the art of stratifying the patient as, say, non-serious to serious, or probably going into serious by knowing their medical backgrounds, I think it is going to be easy work for you. Waiting area of the patient outside your chamber is again going to be a little challenging, because people will rush, there will be no social distancing. So probably you should have a way out to keep them sitting outside in the waiting area. Probably you should manage them by giving them time of appointments, something like that. This I am talking to those young practitioners that have just completed their, medicine, and they are looking forward into general practice.
Bharat, your advice to the young pulmonologists who will be running their OPDs?
So first of all, 3rd May is the end of a lockdown, but COVID is there to stay. So we have to be still geared up with the same protective equipments. We have to still see the patient with the same precautions that we are taking now. As far as the OPD is concerned, because the maximum of these patients are now going to come to your outpatient departments, all the younger physicians or physicians who are seeing patients, they should manage their waiting areas very well. There has to be distancing, there has to be good appointment systems that have to be followed. And for you also, you have to stick to it that only patients who are dependent for some attendant to be with them need someone to accompany. Otherwise, only the patient can come, and you can be as brisker as possible with your examination and your what your prescriptions you have to generate. And in between your OPDs, probably you are also stressed down with the entire PPs, continuously thinking about all these things. A little bit of breaks in between the OPDs will help you. So this is what I have to advise, that first of all, COVID is going to stay. You are going to see these cases on and off for months together. So let us be geared up for that, mentally also and physically also.
Satish, you are going to see a lot of people rushing into the emergency.
Yeah. Actually, yes, sir. My worry is not about COVID right now. The actual traumas will start now. Once the lockdown is open now, there is right now in the last 3 weeks we saw very less trauma cases. Now we'll get non-COVID emergencies also more often, because all the clinics are open now, all the nursing homes are open or going to open now. So they'll refer the patients to our departments. So you need to take care of everyone, and we have to make sure that they should not feel that they are coming to a hospital where you are going to see a corona patients or COVID patients also. We should give a confidence to them that we are very safe environment. We will be seeing a patients. Doctors are separated in seeing a suspect patients. Doctors are separate. They are seeing a suspected patients. That is a very crucial tough job going to happen with the emergency physicians. And yes, preparedness is the only key. We have to prepare well. You need to divide your teams, shifts, whatever, and screen properly, triage properly, and if possible, have a helpline number again exclusively for your departments. If the patients are calling to you, give a tele call or video guidance, whether they need exactly to come to the hospital or not. That guidance definitely will prevent some of the footfalls. I can say, at least we can reduce our burden from them. Actually, we can give our existing or old patients, instead of calling them for 1 month, or you can call from the next 2 months. And like the same all the consultants together, if they educate their past patients or anyone, I think apparently the footfalls coming to the hospital or emergency departments will be reduced, I feel.
I agree with you completely. Once the lockdown is open, I think the key would be to continue the intensity, no complacency. We need to be ever watchful. In fact, we need to be more watchful, because the atypical presentations may go up. There may be co-presentations. People may have COVID as well as come in with other emergencies. So I think we need to be extra careful once the lockdown is over. One more question to all the panelists. Now, we all look younger, but you all agree that our generation and the next generation, there's a huge gap. The way we relax, I've seen my own team members, the way they relax is different. For them, weekend parties, discos, friends, recreations, all this is not going to happen. So what is your advice to them as to how can they relax socially? Whatever little time they get during their off work hours. I'm not sure if any one of us can advise that, but what would be your advice?
Sir, social distancing, I'm in between. I can say I'm between the in between generation. I am. So social distance should happen, should continue definitely, because though they're new young guys, they know the importance of social distancing. They know the importance of the transmission of the infection. They have to take it very well, because if they do starting the partying or gatherings, the people will see them and they can do this. They do the same thing, because the families, they are seeing them as the doctors. They need to be role models. They have to sacrifice a little bit. I can say they have to sacrifice about their parties or night outs or gatherings, whatever. Because it's the time we have to prove that we are the leaders. We have to show them. We need to be in the front line. We should show them, because whatever we act, the other people will follow us. If you in the family, if I go for a party, definitely everyone feels that we also can join the party. So I still feel we had to sacrifice the time, bear for some more days. The parties are pending. Yes, we will have parties. You can have parties till the transmission reduces, till the workload reduces, till the pandemic ends. I still feel you need to sacrifice ourselves. And again, it's not like that you should not go out and partying. There are a lot of TV channels are there, books are there, movies are there. All the net is free right now. You can enjoy movies, whatever. That can happen. That will not stop actually. Also.
See, we will be talking in a long time pre-COVID and post-COVID era. The way we used to have part-time or past-time pre-COVID era will be completely redefined in the post-COVID era. We are not going to suddenly rush into malls and go into the theaters or the pubs or whatever places where we used to chill and we used to sit very close to each other, absolutely forgetting about physical distancing. I personally feel so that this disease has put in us enough doubt and fear to understand among the doctor fraternity that there is something called as a physical distancing that has to be maintained from now and henceforth forever. Till this corona has to stay for long. So when it will end and when the transmission would be bad or good enough for us to really start again, one of the best ways to what we are doing right now. We are able to connect to each, all of us, able to do it very easily with the help of technology. I think this could be one media what we are right now doing, that having a chat with all of our friends at the same time, sitting and talking to each other, not really physically in front of each other, but yes, we are there. I can see Dr. Satish, I can see my dear friend Gansham, everybody we can see, and then we can still unwind ourselves. The thing is, we have to look, listen, and link. I think that is the basic key here.
Bharat, anything that you want to say?
Social distancing needs to be maintained, and probably more than an infective, this is going to change your lifestyle. So it's a lifestyle disorder. So your disorders now have to be compulsorily be changed, and probably recreate yourself with things which you have not been able to pursue during your education time, during your stressful periods of your job, and all these things like music or learning an instrument or something of that sort that will probably keep you cheerful. So that thing should be focused on rather than partying and going into pubs and all these things.
COVID taught us lot many things about self introspection, and it has built up lot of self confidence that you can do all household activities without maid. So for me at least, I think that is the most important thing I learned in this COVID lockdown period. And this discipline which we put ourselves should be continued, even if the lockdown is released, is my message to you all.
Yeah, I totally agree with you all. I think this experience has been a life-changing experience.
Yes.
It has taught us many things, and in the time coming that is going to come by, we are going to learn new things. But what we all agree today is that the difficult days are not over. In fact, the general feeling is that we will see more and more number of patients. We are a few steps behind the West in terms of the numbers, in terms of the number of critically ill patients that are going to come to us. Probably The predictions are, as the days come by, maybe May and July, August. I mean, that's the season when India may see the peak of patients. A message from the Medicover group of hospitals, from all the consultants who are sitting with me, to all the junior doctors out there. You are the most vital key in this battle against COVID. We need you to fight this battle across the world. Just not across the country of India, but across the world. It is the young doctors across all specialties who will play a major role in winning this battle. So take care of yourselves, stay safe, make sure that you clear whatever ideas, doubts, misconceptions you have with your seniors, and request to all the seniors out there, all the mentors out there, please spend time with your team, please spend time with your trainees, please spend time with your juniors, make them part of the discussions, make them part of the decisions that are taken, because this is going to be a collective fight. No single individual is going to, or no single individual can fight this battle and win. I'm confident that together as a team, we will overcome this hurdle and we will come out victorious. With that, I wish to say goodbye to all of you. Stay safe, stay healthy, take care of yourself, and please take care of your juniors.